I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with director Catriona McKenzie. Katrina, you are one of the most popular and sought after directors at the moment, which I guess is a great feeling. So I want to start though with talking about Echo, because you directed one episode from from that limited series, and it's the episode that I can't get out of my mind. So I firstly just want to know, how did you get into directing on an MCU series, a big budget, big high profile?
I mean, yeah, it's so nice to be here and so nice to meet you as a fellow Australian. I mean, you get you get calls all the time for meetings. I guess, I do half-hour comedy, I do genre, and I do drama. And so I suppose, this particular series that they were developing is got a little bit, like it's grounded, it's grittier than perhaps some of the other stuff. So I felt like I just hit that sweet spot. I'm becoming one of the, big action female action directors. I do The Boys, and I'm doing some Gen V and Out of Range and all sorts of things. So I I felt like it was really everything I'd been building to as a filmmaker, because I'm Koori and I restore old cars and I'm a beekeeper and I've got very eclectic tastes, and everything came together for that moment. And like I got to work with Tantu Cardinal. She was the young woman in Dances with Wolves, and like I feel like she's a trailbreaker and a trailblazer. And so many people like Chaskey and Graham Greene, Zane. There were so many people that I'd seen on the, as a little girl in Australia looking at the big screen. And suddenly there I was, directing Tantu and all of them. And Alakwa Cox, like she is a legend.
I
You
know,
know,
like, it's her first main role, her first role when she was in Hawkeye as Echo Maya Lopez. Then she's so damn good that Disney and Marvel say, "Look, we're just going to give you your own show. We want to explore this character." And when I spoke to her about that, I mean, she still can't quite believe that this has happened to her in her career. And so then the show is made. Obviously, it's so good. There's so much going on in the show. It's not just an action series. There's a lot going on under the surface. And so by the time we get to your episode, Tuklo, they're in this kind of retro skate place. I don't even know what you call those things these days. And so I immediately thought, whoever directed this and shot this, and tried to block it and set it up would have had a really hard time, because there's a lot going on in terms of the lighting. So can you talk me through what was the main challenges in directing that heavy action oriented episode, but in this very unusual space?
well, it was interesting because when I got the script, and then when I went to an amazing script, amazing writers, and then when I went to the location, what they'd written and the location didn't quite work. So I was like, oh, you know. But there were some really cool things about it. There was a Make America Skate Again, and I immediately thought, well, our native hero has to break through that wall. And that was a structural thing, because like they had to engineer it so she could break through and the whole building wouldn't collapse. There were certain things, but I guess that's one of the joys about working for Marvel, is that you have an idea and you pitch it, and best idea wins. And so that was something that we just sort of scaffolded the whole sort of sequence around. And then of course I wanted all those 50s and 60s pinball machines, because there's a couple where she gets the lassos. It's cowboys and Indians. Well, no, it's now Indians and cowboys, and she has those kind of whips that she whips the bad guys into shape. So there were a few really fun moments that were just crying out to be had. And so I storyboarded that sequence, and I got the stunt team, involved. And actually, stepping back, the very first thing I ever did when I got to the Marvel Studios is I just sat quietly and watched Alakwa with the stunt team working out. And I was like, who? It's a great story. Who is this woman that was living her life and is plucked and put into a Marvel, series? And Alakwa is so cool, and she's so staunch and strong and athletic. And I'm sitting there watching this woman go through all the moves and punching and rolling and kicking and everything. And I'm like, she can do anything. So we designed this really cool sequence in a skate rink. And yeah, it was so much fun. And we, we had infrared lights going. We had all sorts of technical things that were, a little bit unusual. And we just ran amok and we had fun. And she was an absolute champion. She never, if she wasn't happy, she said, I want to go again. Okay, go again. She never took a back step. So it was fun. It was really fun to work with her.
You know what's really interesting to me, and this could have just been coincidental, but a lot of really awesome, badass women are at the helm on this show. And you directed this one episode, or the other four episodes were directed by another great female director. And then obviously there's women at the top in terms of who's running the show, who's starring in it, what it's about, and even your cinematographer. So what's going on there? Was that just do you think that was an intentional choice?
I mean, there is, we've had a bit of a reformation in terms of women creatives in the film and television industry. And, Magdalena Gorka was my cinematographer. She's Polish. She's like Beethoven. I like to talk in musical terms. So she's Beethoven, I'm Thelonious Monk. And so the way that we work, and so, she's very technical, she's very precise. And I'm someone who likes to riff and play a little bit. So actually, you would think it would be a cacophony. But I think episode 3 really sort of shows how, two women creatives get together and run amok and come up with something unusual. I mean, we shot the Tuklo episodes, the flashbacks are in there. You'll call it black and white, but it's actually infrared. It was a very technical thing to do. And Magdalena was talking to some of the greats of the industry, collecting information. How can we do this? Not just black and white, because the infrared glows. It's got an ancestral thrum to it that is really cool. So we're like, how can we do it? And it's Marvel, and they backed the idea. And so we got to play, I felt like the beautiful thing about Echo, well, there's so many beautiful things, but to be able to have the backing of Marvel to have an idea and then go for it is a real privilege. So it was so much fun. And yeah, Magdalena was great. The stunt woman, Alakwa's double was fantastic, Caitlin. Yeah, there was a lot of strong women across the crew. But the other side of it is I did a scene with Tantu and Alakwa, and it was a very emotional scene about the ancestors coming to the,
Yeah.
and I called cut on that scene, and I turned around and all these men, all these big buffy men, they were just all weeping, like everyone together. I mean, strong women, but also really fantastic crew members really
Yeah.
got involved and leaned into the material. And I think that was great, like
Mm.
women, we can lead, we can, we can be in every part of the process. So yeah,
Of
it was.
course. And like I don't normally ask a question like that because I just don't think it really matters anymore, obviously. But I just found it really interesting that a show like this, so heavy on, I guess there's some kind of expectation for like, oh, men are the ones that do all the fighting. No, not at all. In this one, this is women leading, this is women in the spotlight. It's full on badass action fighting, and it's also so tender, and there's so much going on in terms of her ancestry. And I'm glad you raised that because that was my favorite part of this whole series. I remember saying to Alakwa that I was so moved by how she's able to uh, think back and utilize the power of the women in her ancestry. I just wonder then, obviously you, Catriona, as having a First Nations Indigenous background, what did that mean to you to bring that, to shine a light on that, and how so that what audiences can and make to maybe understand it better.
Well, so I started off as a filmmaker, I started off doing cultural mapping in the out of CAMA, Central Australian Aboriginal Media Association. And we would go into the desert with a camera and a sound recorders, and we would sit down with elders and we would record their stories. And it was very much not even documentary, we would just record their stories. And so there was a humility and a humanity as just listening to these elders tell their amazing stories and getting to know them. And there's all sorts of cultural protocols that I was raised in terms of when you go into Aboriginal communities, there are certain cultural respectful rules that you have. And I had started in that tradition. And so it was very cool because, I also did Alaska Daily, and, that was about missing Alaskan women, Native women, and, going into communities as an Australian Indigenous woman, having that skill set that I've taken, I've learned and I've taken with me, and then being able to come into a community and be very respectful and be very humble and listen, even if there's a big machine that needs to come in and make to have that process under my belt, I think is really, I felt like I was useful. I wasn't just some kind of rough rider coming in and running amok with a community. Like I worked with the Choctaw people on Echo, and I was able to bring that skill set in a respectful way, which was good for me, but it was good for everyone because we had cultural consultants, Pishon Bread, of course, and Christina
Yeah.
King. But yeah, like to be able to go, I know how I can do this in a respectful fashion, just felt like I've, I've done something, I can bring something good that's
Yeah.
useful. Yeah, yeah.
I see it as like, I just felt really proud. And even though I'm not of any Indigenous background, although I seem to have some affinity with that culture in our country, in Australia, but I love seeing Indigenous culture in other countries represented. And I wonder if people like Chaskay, Graham, and Tantu, and Devery, and even Alaka, were they conscious of that link that you also had from another side of the planet, and yet still that Indigenous voice is still something that you were interested in bringing out?
I mean, with all of the cast and the crew, as a director, I'm very collaborative. I'm very transparent. I like to tell people this is who I am because I just feel, particularly for actors, a lot of actors, it boggles my mind really, but I think it's really good to be spiritually and humanly clear with people and very present with people. And so, yeah, I was very clear about who I am, my background, my cultural background, and how we work in communities. And I was always asking questions. How do you guys like to work? Like in Australia, one of the things is, can I shoot that mountain? If that's sacred, well, we'll just turn the camera. I never ran into anything like that in America on Echo, but I was always asking the question, is this okay? Can we shoot this? How can we shoot this? And there were certainly some scenes that were written where we negotiated because that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be like that. We wouldn't show that. That's not something we want to show.
Yeah.
So I felt that, yeah, it was very mutually respectful. And yeah, I loved working with the Choctaw Nation. They were really cool. And I got to say also American Sign Language, I learned all the cool signs. Like this one is awesome. It's effing awesome. That's effing awesome.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's thanks to you. And many more, but also interfacing with Doug Ridloff, who was our ASL producer, and just to be able to bring those worlds together with who I am, to bring it into that arena it was so brilliant. And now I have all those great signs.
Yeah. I know before my interview with Alaka, I was like, okay, I just tried to memorize like good afternoon. And she got it. I was like, okay, good, I got one. That's awesome. Um, yeah, amputee, deaf, indigenous, woman, I guess if you want to call that something that you want to key you to. There's a lot going on with that character, and I'm so glad that this show was made so that we could enjoy her journey. But I was also thinking, I don't know what's going on with your career right now, but you're very busy and very sought after, and that's not a bad problem. It's nothing to sneeze at. So not only did you work on Echo, but you've got The Boys coming up. I think it's episode 7 that you directed. You've got what else is coming up? Outer
Well, I can
Range,
answer
which is like
out of
one of
range.
my favorite shows. I haven't seen season 2 yet. I'm dying to see it. I think you did one episode of that as well, right? I think episode 7 of that. What's going on
The
with like
finale.
you've got episode 7 thing going on there.
Oh, yeah.
The cleaning lady you've done, Shining Vale, which is quite funny but also quite horrifying. That show, it's a really interesting show. Um, so how does that feel to be so sought after in Hollywood? You came there just before the pandemic. You kind of claimed it as your new home for now, and you're working steadily. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I got here just before the COVID hit, and I did the finale of Mythic Quest, and then I just started to work. I did Supernatural, I did, Walking Dead. I did all these different shows, and I guess I've found my creative tribe while I've been in the States. And yeah, like I worked on episode 407 of The Boys,
Yeah.
and that was a big action sequence. Like there was one scene we took 10 days to shoot. Like it was like a movie. It was amazing, and I'm really enjoying being able to do, always working with actors is my priority, but also do very big, large scale technical scenes. Outer Range was really cool. Again, there's a native strand through that with the, Detective Joy and the black hole and what that means for the community. So I really loved how they wove those narrative threads together. And yeah, I mean, I can say 1 degree Kevin Bacon now. I'm about to go and do the finale of The Bondsman, which is in Georgia with Kevin, which is very cool. Cleaning Lady was amazing. So yeah, I am very busy, and I feel lucky, but I worked really hard for that luck, and I'm just having a ball. I love collaborating with creative people and actors, and it always seems to work out. So I just keep getting the opportunities. So
Yeah. And I think you're really forging like a path for yourself in genre, particularly action genre, a bit of sci-fi. I mean, The Boys is a really high profile job to get. And I mean, we can't really talk about it because it hasn't come out yet. Amazon will find us and probably neck us.
right.
So we can't do it. And Outer Range, like that first season blew my mind. And I cannot wait to see what you've all come up with for season 2. But going back to Echo, um, I just feel like now that it's out, people have watched it and really loved it. What would you say is the thing that you learnt most about your craft, if you want to put it that way, from your time on Echo?
One of the beautiful challenges of Echo was that because we have our main character signing with her hands, the framing had to be different. And
Oh,
so, like I couldn't always just go into a close up. I had to accommodate the language of the characters and the world that we were in. And so it was really, we all have our toolkit that we bring with us, but I really loved how was challenged to stretch visually. I just didn't want to always be shooting in mid shot. So how can I choreograph the coverage in a kinetic way so that we get the best of both worlds? And I guess that's a rare opportunity. I love to be challenged. I don't really have that fear gene. Like I'm much more curious. I'm going to lean in and wow. So I was really happy with how it went. And yeah, I mean, I think I just look forward to doing more of that large scale grounded character because I love my characters. I love my actors. So, but I look forward to doing more of that, large scale genre. But I'm a sook too, like I do love the drama. I love working with actors on just straight drama. But yeah, bring it on. I love that I'm here. I'm really respectful and grateful to the shoulders of the women that I'm standing on those shoulders of,
yeah,
but and always putting my hand out. Like, I've had various people shadowing me. And I'm always happy to do that as well, just to spread the love. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the stories that are waiting to be told. I'm a writer as well, so
yeah.
I've got a few stories brewing away. So
Oh, I look forward to those. Yeah, I know that is a lot of your background. And by the way, for people watching, in case you weren't aware, a sook is someone who likes to have a good cry, who's a bit sensitive, from a fellow sook. I just wanted to interpret, because once two Aussies get together, we just start talking our own language. So it's just important that I put that out there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Catriona, thank you so much for your time today. Congrats on some really impressive work on Tuklo, the episode in Echo that you directed. I loved it so much. And yeah, you're just killing it all over the place. And we wish you all the best. I hope to catch up with you on your next project.
Wait, thank you. No worries.